Yeah, in fact, I run this organization, which is formerly the network. It's called the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, and mostly known as NIFTY. And we do work in public and high schools and middle schools throughout the world. So I have a good front seat view of what's working in education and what's not working. And there is no question that most schools throughout the world just need to press a reset button. In both how that people, in both how they teach and what they're teaching. As the speakers discussed last night, over the last half of the century, basically everything in our lives have changed. How we travel, how we talk, how we dress, how we farm, and everything certainly in this photo has changed, except the school. This school actually still operates today. They're doing things pretty much like they did when this picture was taken 50 years ago. They, still are on schedule that was based on the food harvest schedule. They still have small classes and individual teachers standing in a lecture like this and give exams and all of that. And some schools, and perhaps this one, did a pretty decent job 50 years ago preparing young people for their futures and for their jobs. And jobs is really what I want to talk to you about tonight, because I am deeply concerned about what my children, what your children, what our grandchildren are going to do when it comes to getting a job. My kids, for example, the most would consider having major advantages. They have from an educated family. They went to great schools. They have resources to maximize their talents. Yet I'm worried for them as I see them as millennials with the landscape already changing under their feet. And for children coming from economically disadvantaged circumstances, the future prospects are just grim. I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years working, trying to figure out what opportunity will look like in the future as we race towards this hyper-competitive, knowledge-based global economy. It's important to actually imagine what the jobs of tomorrow are going to look like. And it's been my pleasure and honor to work with some of the world's greatest innovators as we look at these global issues and how they're going to affect particular economies. And here are just some facts. I'm going to start with a bit of good news. Changing landscapes in some nations are going to open up as many as 100 million jobs globally in the next 25 years. Germany is estimating that they're going to need 3 million new workers. In the United States, we expect 70 million baby boomers to retire in the next 2 decades. The Japanese population is expected to decline by 30 million people, and they're talking about needing to import 10 million workers just to maintain their current employment levels. And unfortunately, that's kind of where the good news ends. Me and the clicker. Here we go. 2 billion young people are going to need jobs over that same period. And the not so well hidden secret now is the world as a whole is just getting significantly younger. Right now, half of India's 1.2 billion people which means 600 million young people are going to be entering the job market in the next 25 years. China's got another 500 million that are going to join them. And by 2050, Africa, the entire continent of Africa, is going to be majority youth with yet another 500 million young people entering the job market. And that all means that the world will soon have at least 20 applicants for every current job that we can imagine today. So now that's where we're headed. Where are we today? In the United States, it's already 3 times as hard for a young person to get a job as an adult. And youth unemployment rates are running way in excess of 20%. In some European countries, we have youth unemployment up to 60%, and having too many people looking for work is just stalling this work we've done to on-ramp to financial inclusion, and that's just the beginning. Here in the Middle East, it's so bad that we know that people have taken to the streets. And the situation is bleak, and many are realizing now that this grave problem needs big solution. At its annual meeting this January in Davos, the World Economic Forum, released their annual survey of its members and their view of what's the biggest challenges in the next 10 years. And I, who talk about this subject all the time, we're absolutely amazed to see that the second unemployment specifically focused on youth was the number 2 problem that people saw globally in the next 10 years. And just to give you a perspective on that, clean water was number 3, and sustainable food systems was number 8. So the numbers that I share with you are, have significant implications way beyond even the young children that we actually care about in these rooms. So now that I've painted a really bleak picture, you may be asking yourself what I think we can do about it, what's possible, what can change these circumstances. As a change agent, I actually really do believe that we can change what schools are teaching. The skills gaps are real and they need to get fixed, but that alone isn't going to solve this problem, because even today, if the skill gap didn't exist, we would be creeping up on youth unemployment numbers on virtually every continent. So a simple hypothesis: our educators need to change the way this next generation, young people in general, think about opportunity. If we do this, we can empower the next generation to actually think and act like entrepreneurs. So why might I believe that teaching entrepreneurship is the key to job creation? Because just about everywhere, nearly all net new jobs are created by startup companies, not the big corporations. For example, in Japan, where I was last week, companies founded in the last 20 years have contributed a net number of 1.5 million jobs to that economy, and companies founded 20 years and longer have reduced their workforces by 3.1 million. And it's not just a Japan thing. In fact, according to the World Bank, Japan ranks dead last in the countries which create enterprises. According to the Kauffman Foundation, since 1980, and I quote, "Without startups, net job creation for the American economy would be negative in all but a handful of years." And their data shows that, in fact, if all net new jobs during the last 30 years in America have been created by enterprises in existence for less than 30 years. I'm sorry, less than 5 years. So and entrepreneurship equates to starting a new business for most people, or launching a product. In truth, and the way that we're thinking about it, being an entrepreneur is just a way of thinking. At Nifty, we call it the Entrepreneurship Mindset. Lots of research and complicated attributes, but in the simplest terms, the entrepreneurship mindset, as we describe it, is a unique set of challenges and skills that entrepreneurs on a daily basis do well. And it really boils down to 5 things. 1, recognizing opportunity. 2, acting on that opportunity. 3, persevering through setbacks. 4, learning from that experience. And finally, change in ways that lead to success. And let me take a minute to walk you through these. First, and how they sort of relate to classroom and learning. First, in recognizing opportunity, we have to go through a process especially to help young people even be able to visualize opportunity. People who live in your neighborhood are more likely to know what the neighborhood needs. And that's actually your unique comparative advantage. If you see a neighborhood with a lot of coffee shops, you might think, well, let's have a bookstore. Second, recognizing opportunity isn't enough. You actually have to act on it to take advantage of it. And as ideas are valuable and plans are super important, a lot of which gets discussed in school, taking action and taking risk is not usually talked about in school, but thinking and like an entrepreneur means acting like one, and it's about assessing and taking risks. So if you're in that neighborhood and thinking that's full of coffee shops and thinking a bookstore would be successful, then you have to actually act on it and open it. Third, setbacks happen. And not just entrepreneurs, but everyone experiences setbacks. The word failure is so scary and so finite for people, and in today's school certainly represents the ultimate rejection. But show me someone who hasn't experienced setbacks, and I'll show you somebody who has led a extremely, extremely cautious life. And what do you do in this example when the mega bookstore opens on the same block as your store? And what do you do after you meet a setback is what makes you an entrepreneur, and setbacks motivate entrepreneurs to do more and try harder. Fourth, entrepreneurs learn. Their ability to have insight and seek insight and advice to turn these setbacks into big lessons. They pivot, they iterate, their skills are successful at what all good people do. And finally, like all entrepreneurs, they act on that opportunity. They act on the lessons they learn. They change, they modify their plans. In this scenario, perhaps they'll open a rare bookstore, which Amazon and this mega store won't have in, or perhaps they'll go back and open a competitive coffee shop. But there's just one thing, and this is the big thing, that this mindset can be taught. Entrepreneurs can actually be made, and there's a bunch of other people who are far smarter than I am. That's Peter Drucker wrote The Entrepreneurial Mystique. It's not magic, it's not mysterious, it has nothing to do with genes, it's a discipline, and like any discipline, it can be learned. Now, of course, there's knowledge and skills associated with entrepreneurship, and you have to learn how to write a plan, how to do your financials, how to market, how to sell, all of which we have found really interested young people and served as a bridge to actually connect them with school and opportunity. But entrepreneurship, as I look at it, is really a way of approaching life and not just a business or a project launch. And every single person should learn to have the ability, they can choose not to do it, to own their own destiny. And using this mindset actually enables them to create a path to a new business or to find one of those hard to find jobs. And I'm 100% sure of that. Reason is that Nifty's been working on this with young people for 26 years, those who are at the most risk to instill this mindset. And we've had the opportunity, as mentioned, to have changed the life of 500 million. I'm already there. 500,000 young people. And we plan to do this with 500,000 more. Almost there. And we plan to reach another 500,000 students in the next 5 years. We take teachers already working in public school systems and middle and high schools across the world and train them in our program. We make classrooms active. Nifty teachers facilitate, they don't lecture. Our students learn about the power of ownership and actually have their firsthand experience of earning money. And we support the classroom with thousands of volunteers who bring real-world insights directly to these students who often have no opportunity to do so. We continue to work with our teacher to strengthen their crafts, and students end up, every student that takes a Nifty course ends up with a full business plan, a learning tool, all the associated financials, and they get to present in front of judges to compete for seed capital. Winners advance through various levels of competitions up through national events in Nifty countries across the globe. So that's how we do it, but I'm most excited to share with you what the results are. Nifty students are significantly more likely to graduate than their peers. Why? Because Nifty links math, reading, writing to the real world, so our students actually see the importance of learning math so they can figure out their ROI or figure out the value of their high school diploma. They're more likely to find a job after they finish school. Why? Because they have learned the skills that employers ultimately want. Employees who act like owners and employees who are innovators. More likely to start their businesses in the US, twice the national average. Why? Because ultimately, once that entrepreneurial mindset gets unleashed, many want to start their own enterprise. And ultimately, they all understand if they can't find a job, they can make one. And not surprisingly, on average, they make more money than their peers. Nifty students actually truly do see their lives in terms of opportunity, focused on action, persistence, and adaptation. And it pays off for them, and it pays off for the rest of us. So let me give you one quick example. Jasmine Lawrence. Actually, we have a mentor in the audience. I would have used Zoe if I knew you were here, Deborah. Jasmine is another one of our heroes. When she was 11 years old, she had a disaster with a product she put in her hair, and she lost all of her hair, and she was devastated, needless to say. And in searching for products and techniques that would work, she noticed that they all had these chemicals that she believed is why her hair fell out. So she wouldn't use any of them, and she concocted some herbs and a mixture of natural ingredients. She started putting them on her scalp, and her hair grew back, and it grew back in a healthy way. This is step one of the entrepreneurship mindset. Jasmine had a need, couldn't find a product, so she made one. A few years later, she went to a nifty biz camp, and she learned all the skills associated with business plans, market, calculating profits, finding customers, and most importantly, generally the value of thinking like an entrepreneur. And Jasmine's camp ended with a business plan competition. She lost. She presented a plan for a beaded headband product. She was fairly devastated, and she realized her headband product was going nowhere. But here's the thing, she had now learned that mindset, and so of course she persevered, she adapted, she learned, she acted again, and she applied what she learned in that biz camp and realized that she already had a product ready to go, tested in the market by herself. And today that company, Eden Body Works, is a multi-million-dollar company, and Jasmine's products are sold in Walmart, Walgreens, Whole Foods, all over the place. She's been on Oprah. And this is important. Jasmine isn't just running this successful business. She went to college. She got a computer science degree. She's knocking it out of the box at, literally, because she's working on Xbox at Microsoft. And she's got 2 jobs. She's hired her mother to run the business, and they've got 26 other employees there running that. And she is bringing us back jobs. So because she learned to think like an entrepreneur, to look for opportunity, to overcome adversity, to learn change. Which brings me back to jobs. 2 billion young jobs. As I mentioned earlier, Nifty has plans to get to another 500,000 students in the next 5 years. And we know by experience about 25% of our students actually start businesses, and on average they create 4 jobs. So that's going to make another 500,000. And I'm going to keep going and say that 1%, so 5,000, will create medium-sized companies and employ 200 people. Another 1 million jobs. So then maybe 1,000 of them can create a big company, employing another 1,000 people. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be clicking my slides. All right, we're going to get to 3 of 5. So of those, and say 10 end up creating, we're going to stretch and say 10 end up creating a global employer, the type of company that employs an average of 100,000. So that gets us to 3.5 million jobs just from Nifty, and I assure you Nifty is a little teeny organization. Pretty good ROI, 7 jobs over the long haul for the next 500,000 that we create over the next 5 years, but clearly not enough. What we actually need is 600 Nifties to get to 2 billion jobs. So my thesis is we need to create a movement. We need to scale it, thank you, and instill this mindset in virtually all young people around the globe. And the tool that we're using to help do this is called the Entrepreneurial Mindset Index, where we've actually taken these 26 years of data that we had and rolled it up into an index that we're going to actually roll out to the world that hopefully can be an open source movement to actually bring this very simple intervention into every classroom in the world. No single organization can create 2 billion jobs, but one organization can certainly have an idea and lead the way. And that's where we are today. And thank you very much. Sorry, losing the voice. Questions?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Robin Jackson. I work for UNESCO in Myanmar, and one of the projects that I'm working on at the moment is setting up a a centre of excellence with the Yangon Institute of Economics. And the Centre of Excellence includes a whole range of programs. And so relatively recently, I've been designing a program which is all about strengthening the business skills of youth for employment in Myanmar. It's a pilot, right? So we'll see how it goes. But what interests me, of course, in what you've shown us here is how to possibly link up with what it is that you're doing in regards to entrepreneurship training, because it would fit beautifully with this pilot program and eventually with the centre itself. So it's not so much a question, it's more, you know, I need to get your card and we need to have a talk and make sure that it can be built into it. It's particularly challenging, of course, because Myanmar, as most of you would know, is undergoing an enormous transformation at the moment, and it is extraordinarily challenging for this, even just the first program, to get up. It is really new. So
well, thanks for doing the work you're doing. You know, we have more opportunity than we can meet, which is a tragedy, because, you know, where there's opportunity, we should actually be doing it. You know, our assets are that we actually really understand how to teach this, we understand how to localize content to do it, and we really understand how to train teachers, because half of the training of teachers is getting them to think entrepreneurially, and that's not what you normally walk into. So the key for us being, you know, and we want to share that with everybody. The key to moving into a region is really a well-placed education partner who has relationships in the schools, because getting this into the schools is challenging, and getting it into the school is the way, even though we can do biz camps and freestanding stuff, is the way that I think we're going to force systemic change. The 5,000 teachers that we've trained worldwide, you know, are the assets that are going to keep on going. So I'd love to talk to you about Myanmar.
So I didn't introduce myself before. My name is Chikadi Chima, and my company is called Moonshot, and I also have a publication, and it's called PR Tips for Startups. So I teach public relations and marketing for entrepreneurs, and I have a global audience in 140 countries. So I'm very interested in this because it ties the morning plenary session together with the larger problem, which is that access to education is one thing, but then the system of education, as I see it, creates consumers, and people need to be able to think more entrepreneurially, because, at least in the United States, the social contract around employment is very broken, that just getting a job is not a guarantee of future employment, it's just a job. So I'm very, very excited about this, and I guess I should make this a question, right? But I guess the issue that I think this is really, what really excites me about this is that people do need to figure out ways to create value, and traditionally creating value was about creating value for an employer, and now one of the things that I like to say is that an entrepreneur never lets a problem go to waste. So that entrepreneurial mindset of looking for problems and being the one to solve it, in the example you shared about the woman whose hair fell out because she used the wrong product. So again, you know, maybe I'd just like to talk to you both after the session. But,
yeah, you know, I'd love to. And it's, you know, people often ask what happens to the kids who you pop as entrepreneurs immediately, because we have kids who are running businesses, real businesses in high school, et cetera. And we've got all kinds of, you know, tech camps, the various supports for the kids that are trying to get operationally busy fast. But the truth of the matter is, as they come up through these competitions and they're judged by entrepreneurs and they're judged by great business leaders, Deborah's one right there, those people adopt them. Because particularly the kids that we work with, you know, we work with kids that people have the lowest expectations for. They are blown away that these young people, you know, in a matter of 60, 90-hour intervention, like one class of time, can actually, you know, present a business plan that's sometimes better than what most of us see coming into our offices. So the infrastructure, you know, what you're doing in terms of your audience. I don't know how you get it out to. These kids are hungry and they're interested, and we're creating this network of kids who are working the system themselves. And like a good entrepreneur, they seek information. So I'd love to talk to you about your network, et cetera, too.